to the Over and Back Classic NBA podcast. I am Jason, and with me as usual is Rich. Hello, Rich.
Hey, what's up? 249 this episode, I think.
249?
Yeah, 249th
nice.
Episode. So, yeah, 250 sneaking up on us here, so we'll have to figure out something to do for that.
We gotta do some note on that one. Yeah, it's happy 249 to us.
Yes.
So,
We've been fiercely going through our archives, trying to clean all that stuff up. I know a lot of people have mentioned to us over the last few months that, hey, what the hell happened to all your guys' old podcasts and stuff? And, well, it's a long story, but not our choice, believe it or not, to delete all of our archives from every RSS feed that ever had them. Not our choice, but it happened, and we are currently trying to recover as much as we can. But you and I have talked about, and we are going to do it, start uploading some classic episodes to our feed as well. And we'll let people know, obviously, that this episode was released in 2015, so some of the stuff that's being said isn't totally relevant, but a lot of people have asked about that, and we know, and we're doing what we can to fix that. But in that, I discovered, we're at 249, so cool.
Nice. Good deal. Yeah, and fortunately, again, with most of our past episodes, are going to be pretty much relevant information today than it was in 215, with the exception of minor thing here or there, some records updating or what have you. But occasionally you can look at how silly we were to have those opinions in 2015.
There was one I actually wanted to go back and listen. It was us previewing the 2015 season or something that, with hey, here's what's going to happen in 2015, and here's history that could be made or whatever. And I would love to just hear what I'm even trying to remember what the hot takes of 2015 were, but this Warriors thing, I don't know. It's too small. You can't trade. You can't trade Monta Ellis and expect to be a good.
No, you can't shoot all those threes. That's ridiculous. Nobody has whatever shooting so many threes.
Yeah,
just completely absurd. Yeah, that'll be fun. But for this episode that we're getting into, we are looking at players who have legacies with two franchises, basically players who are important in two franchises' histories, trying to kind of dig into that phenomenon of having your legacy kind of split within two franchises. And what we did here was we found a list of players who have played more than 15,000 minutes with two separate franchises. And it's a pretty small list. We'll get into it here, and we'll talk a little bit about also other franchises and the players that have had more than 15,000 minutes on each franchise, and what it says about each franchise going forward. So as we get into it, I'm sure the topic will become more clear. I may not have explained it to the best in the prelude, but I do think it is an interesting topic.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when you initially came up with the topic, and I'm thinking, oh man, it's got to be a lot of guys, right? It seems like there should be a lot more guys. And what we found out in this is that there's not a lot of people that fit our exact criteria here, the 15,000 minutes for two franchises. There's a lot of very close things where people are just a few minutes away or 100 minutes away or 1,000 minutes away or whatever. But again, I think it is kind of shocking that it isn't higher on this list. And the list that we have, it's a very interesting list. And I think every single player that we talk about is a guy that I don't know that I'm shocked is on the list. They're all all-time great players, but in some of the ways and the minutes they achieved and that sort of stuff is a little bit surprising. So I think it was a really interesting topic when you brought it up, and the research has been a lot of fun too to see that, and like you said, ultimately what we're going to try to find out too is the importance in team history of these guys, because these are all guys. These are not Kobe Bryant, who had his entire career with the Lakers and firmly planted his flag with the Los Angeles Lakers or whatever. These are guys who really could have interesting legacies because they might have a legacy with this franchise or that franchise, or even if they had more minutes on franchise A, they mean more to franchise A history than they do to franchise B, or so it's really interesting in that sense to try to figure out where these people fit and where they fit in the franchise's real legacy and importance in that team's history as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And, one note for record-keeping purposes, we do not have minutes totals for anyone pre-1952 NBA. So the first two seasons of the NBA plus the BAA NBL totals don't officially count. It doesn't affect anybody on the 15,000 in two franchises list, but some of the franchise totals may be slightly skewed because it's not counting guys before then. But no one important really is left off here. I don't think so. But just wanted to note that for the record. But we'll start breaking down the list. First, Lou Jabbar, of course, the all-time leader overall in NBA ABA minutes, played for the Milwaukee Bucks for the for the first 6 seasons of his career, in which he had almost 20,000 minutes. Also played for the Lakers at 37,492 minutes, ranking second in team history. He's fourth in franchise history for the Bucks. There are 14 Bucks total who have more than 15,000 minutes in franchise history. Slightly higher than I would have expected still in franchise history. I guess, relatively short amount of time, but of course he played a whole lot of minutes during those seasons.
Yeah, that's and a lot of these guys that we are going to bring up. It is interesting because you'll kind of think, wait a minute, that guy he played that many minutes for that team or whatever. And Kareem was the first one where I was like, oh man, really, he's got that many minutes of the Bucks? But then you go look at his numbers and it's like, oh yeah, this man played every minute of every game he had in a Milwaukee uniform. So yeah, while the years aren't that long, the minutes played are gigantic too, and I think it's a surprisingly amount of years too. I think like a lot of people kind of assume he got bored and done with Milwaukee in like 2-3 years or whatever, and he did play there I think a little bit longer than people expect. But yeah, the minutes load is really what puts him over the top here with the almost 20,000 minutes played in just a couple seasons there. So
right, exactly. So he if you just look at his Bucks years. He had almost 115 win shares, and his total would be 57th all time in NBA ABA history had he retired after only 6 seasons. First in Bucks history in points and rebounds. He's 8th in assists. It's a little surprising there, but he was good passing big man. Won 3 MVPs and had 6 All-Stars in 6 seasons. Was also All NBA 5 times, including 4 times on the first list. Only 25 other players have more than 4 All NBA first team appearances. So, and also was on the All Defensive team 4 times, including 2 first team appearances. Sort of interesting debate on where he would land in importance in team history. And obviously Giannis, is creeping up in this conversation and, maybe number 1 here in a few years, depending on how many, how long he lasts with the Bucks, first of all, and, if he's able to win multiple MVPs. But I think he has a pretty strong case of still being number 1 as of this recording. You could sort of think about somebody like Sidney Moncrief, but he was really good, but not, he was never quite like a superstar. And they didn't, the 80s teams didn't really have a single superstar.
Yeah, Marcus Johnson is there too. There's a lot of like the Bob Dandridge, like there's a lot of those names that are like guys that were like, yeah, those are really good players. And maybe sentimentally they're higher on the list, but I kind of think you got to pick Kareem, right? Like, I mean, given that the franchise hasn't reached the peaks that they reached with him, since then and stuff, I think like you're absolutely right. Giannis in the next, if he re-signs and he sticks in Milwaukee, I think he's a shoo-in. Especially if they win a title, then it's a no-doubter. But I think even with, he re-signs there and barring good health and all that sort of stuff, maybe wins another MVP or so, I think he then supplants Kareem. But like right now, I don't know that I can bet against Kareem. I mean, there's a lot of names there of like guys that were real good, solid pieces on the Bucks for many, many years, but it's still got to be Kareem, right? I mean, he took the NBA by storm and really got that franchise, again, like we said, on the heights that they haven't been to since. So
yeah, you could, like, in terms of like guys who were sort of superstars, Marcus Johnson was kind of the only borderline one, but obviously he got traded and then injuries sort of derailed his career, so I don't think he quite gets to that point. But he's sort of the only one I would say in history pre-Giannis who even kind of approaches that conversation.
Yeah, like Ray Allen was, I think kind of a star, but like,
the team wasn't. I mean, they had one conference finals appearance, but the team wasn't really that strong. So, definitely, I would say, Kareem for sure. And then Lakers history, it's real interesting. Obviously 3 MVPs, 10 All NBA appearances on the Lakers, 6-time All Defensive team, which I didn't quite realize he was on the All Defensive team that many times. I'm sure we talked about that when we did some Kareem episodes, but I completely forgotten about that. Only 52 players in history with more career minutes total than Kareem's total with the Lakers. So you only take the 14 years of his Lakers career, still just outside the top 50 all time in minutes. Played a lot of minutes, folks. That's what I'm trying to say. Good
player too. We've done many things in our 249 episodes, and many times we have reiterated this point. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, a very good player, yes. In the point where you can just have him as a Bucks player, and he's like a top 50 player all time, or just with the Lakers, and you're like, man, that guy's like a top 30 player all time, just on one team, and he did it with 2 teams over the course of many, many years. Kareem, good.
Right. So importance in team history, that's sort of a tough one. Certainly top five. I mean, he had 5 rings there. He was, best or, right next to Magic, second best player for 3 of those. I would say he has a case for number 1 importance in team history. I think most people would argue Magic Johnson or Kobe Bryant, maybe Jerry West as well. And sentimentally, he's definitely not near the top of the list, I think, for most fans, especially more modern fans. I think, Shaq would be in that conversation as well in terms of sentimental favorites. But yeah, I think without a doubt, top 5.
Yeah, it's a tough one in Los Angeles just because there are, like you said, those just mega stars that you're talking about here with guys like, Magic and Kobe. And those guys are benefited, of course, by playing their entire careers with the Lakers. So I think sentimentally they'd probably be ahead of Kareem. But yeah, I think you can easily make a case for him being in the mix. But I'd pick one of Magic or Kobe most likely. So
yeah, no, I would agree.
All right, so you ready for our next guy here?
I am.
This one's interesting. Jason Kidd. So Jason Kidd, 5th all-time in minutes. Mavericks, 17,303 minutes with the Mavericks. And this one initially caught me by surprise because I don't know why I didn't, but I would have never believed that he had that many minutes with the Mavericks. But then, you take into account that he had his first, run there. It was a very short run, obviously, with the Mavericks until he's, traded. And then he comes there in the, the last half of his career, goes to the Mavericks. And I think probably hangs around a lot longer than you think in that 2008 to 2012 run, because it's like it's 6,493 minutes in that first run, which is 95 to 97, halfway through 97, and then the second run 2008 to 2012, it's midway through the season in 2008 or a few games into the season there, but actually accumulates 10,810 minutes in that second run, and I think that caught me by surprise because initially I don't know if I knew he was there that long. I don't know. Were you surprised by Jason Kidd being on the list at all?
A little bit, yeah. And he played, at age 35, he played 2,800 minutes. Age 36, another 2,800. Age 37 plays, 2,600. So, close to 3,000.
Yeah.
Played 80 plus games all 3 of those seasons. So, yeah, he was able to accumulate a lot of minutes by just, playing more than players his age generally, more minutes than guys his age generally play. So that obviously, helps contribute to it for sure.
And I do think as well that we should probably remember too that when he was traded to the Mavericks initially in 2008, he wasn't like what he was maybe early 2000s, but he was still a very, very important, that was a big deal when that happened.
Right.
By the time they eventually win their title and by 2012, he is very much slowing down. He's just kind of a role player, just kind of a spot up shooter, not necessarily the guy that's kind of controlling everything. But I do think we do have to remember too that, like you said, in 2008, 2009, 2010, and even through most of 2011, he is still like a very productive, very big deal. So it's like for whatever reason, I just think of his was like a really old, like decrepit man on the Mavericks, but it's like, no, he really wasn't. He was still, pretty important player at that time. And a weird fun fact that I found out doing the research, it probably doesn't have anything to do with this exact topic, but Jason Kidd never once came off the bench as a Dallas Maverick. Started every game he played as a Dallas Maverick.
That is a fun fact.
And then there's other weird ones too. I was like, man, this guy really doesn't like coming off the bench. Twice came off the bench for the Nets, which makes sense. Again, he's the star player of the Nets, but like even like a weird like injury rehab thing or whatever, just twice in his entire career with the Nets. Once with the Suns, and only 28 times in his final season with the Knicks. So he was a man who liked to start and liked to play a lot of minutes. That's probably why he gets on this list. But as far as other Mavericks stuff, the accolades when he was with the Mavericks, Rookie of the Year, 2-time All-Star, as we said, the 2011 NBA champion, 10th in franchise history right now in win shares at 39. And when we talk about, his importance in team history, Jason Kidd's importance to Dallas Mavericks team history, I mean, very much behind Dirk, obviously. That Dirk's the number one, no doubter, I think. Rolando Blackman, I believe, is probably has a better case than Jason Kidd. I guess Jason Kidd would be top 5, but I'd be very curious to ask like a Dallas Mavericks fan what they, where they slot a Jason Kidd comparable to like a Michael Finley type. You know what I mean? Like where, another sentimental favorite in terms of Michael Finley, but Jason Kidd probably should be higher than Michael Finley, but I don't know if he is. Yeah, it's interesting. Probably top 5, but I don't know if I can name like 4 or 5 other guys that deserve to be higher than him.
Yeah, I mean, Jason Terry be up there, I think, maybe more sentimentally than actual value. I mean, I think I don't know. It's interesting because, of course, the 2011 Mavs that won the championship, they didn't really have a clear second best player. I mean, they had a lot of guys who were good. Terry obviously was really good. Caron Butler was good. Sean Marion was good.
Peja Stojakovic, of course.
Yeah, Peja. They had a lot of guys. Yeah, I mean, they had a lot. They were a really deep team. They had a lot of guys who were names who hadn't won anywhere else and who were really good. I mean, Chandler's probably the second best player on that team, but I don't know. Yeah, you could definitely. You could even make Kidd. I mean, Kidd by then was 37, and like you said, he was doing more spot up shooting. He was directing the offense to a degree, but he and Terry, I think, kind of shared those duties for the most part. Barea as well off the bench. So, so I think that the fact that there was nobody else who was clearly the second best player on the team, I think maybe helps him a little bit because Dirk gets the lion's share of the credit for that title. And I guess, he's kind of more beloved maybe than Michael Finley because of that championship, even though Finley probably had a little bit more longevity with the team. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard to say because he's kind of an unlikable personality, but because
right.
But because of the championship, I think there's still a lot of fans who's there. But yeah, I would say I'd probably slot him third. But I think he's like right there with somebody like Finley, like Nash, even like Mark Aguirre.
Yeah, Derek Harper, too.
Some of Derek Harper, some of the 80s guys, yeah. With a better peak than pretty much any of those guys. But most of his peak years were outside of Dallas. I mean,
right.
First two seasons. So, I think that would push him down a little bit lower is that his best seasons were elsewhere, but he was still really good for a while for those teams. So,
and speaking of his peak years, the Nets are the other team here that he's in there. 18,733 minutes as a Net, leads the Nets, of course, to 2 straight NBA Finals appearances, 4-time All-Star as a Net, 3-time All-NBA first team as a Net. As it stands right now, second in franchise history in win shares still for New Jersey at 56.6. Buck Williams number 1 at 62.8, so he's not far off from there. Points in team history. I mean, it's the Nets, so it's not like you have a ton of other options. I think, pretty safely behind Julius Erving, number 2, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's any case for him ahead of Julius Erving, and there's not really any case for anyone ahead of Kidd. Buck Williams we'll talk about a little bit later, but I just don't think Buck Williams, who was a really solid player, and has any case ahead of Kidd. So I think it's pretty clearly. Number 2. Yeah,
if you ever want like a really just to understand what that franchise has been through over their history, is go and look at the Brooklyn Nets, like franchise leaders in win shares. It is. I'll just tell you, Vince Carter's 7th, and like you know what I mean. Like
right.
that's not good. Derek Coleman is 8th.
Richard Jefferson's 4th.
Yeah,
so,
right. That's what I'm saying. It's
Terry Kittle's his 6th.
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, all good players, solid guys, pretty good guys, but it's just like, holy crap. Yeah, when you read that, you realize it's Erving, it's Kidd, I guess it's Buck, and then it's just like a bunch of guys that played for the Nets over a course of time. So yeah,
right. Yeah,
Chris Morris is 11th. Chris Morris.
Chris Morris.
Come on.
Yes, Mike Kaminsky's 10th. So,
yeah, right. Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah, right. What are we doing here? That's a good question.
Nuts.
Yeah.
Oh, one last thing about Kidd. He had a rare distinction. He almost got to 3 here. Suns. He's within striking distance of 15,000 with the Suns. 12,032 minutes. So again, and you had a astute observation in the notes here for a man with a history of triple doubles. Nice nod here. They almost have almost have 3 teams there. But well, I don't know. Phoenix could suit him up maybe for the quarantine, right?
Maybe.
Yeah. Oh, they're not there. They didn't get invited. I don't think, right?
I think they actually
did. They get invited? I forget. Oh no, I think they did. Yeah, I think they did get invited. So
right.
There we go. So call him. Let's go.
Yeah. All right. Yeah. Why not?
Not far off there. I don't know if I don't know that he's going to accumulate 3,000 minutes during quarantine, but
probably not. No, probably would feel like it, but
right.
Yes. So next we have Elvin Hayes, who is 6th overall in NBA history with in minutes. With the Bullets, he has 29,218. With the Rockets, he has 20,782. He's the only player who has more than 20,000 minutes with 2 franchises. And of course, he had exactly 50,000 for his career. With the Bullets, he's second on the franchise history behind Wes Unseld. There are 11 players in Wizards Bullets history who have crossed that threshold of 15,000. He was an 8-time All-Star. 3-time first All-NBA, 3-time second All-NBA, twice second All-Defensive Team. He's second in team history in win shares. In terms of importance in team history, I think he's clearly number 2 to Wes Unseld and was probably the best player on the 1978 championship team. I don't think there's really much debate there. I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that, right where you have him is exactly where I would have him too.
Yeah, I mean, there's nobody who's played since who I think was really in, contention. I mean, somebody like, Arenas or Wall, didn't play long enough and have had, with Arenas, obviously a bad exit. With Wall, there's been, injuries and stuff. I mean, Beal, he's had some good years, but I think is nowhere near, played long enough for the team to even kind of approach that conversation. So, and there's no one else really, in any other periods who, you could even kind of think on that level. So I think
team success wise too, it's hard to imagine Bradley Beal at any point in his Wizards career ever accumulating that much in terms of playoff runs or title runs or anything like that. Like it's probably not going to. He could stay there for another 10 years and accumulate a bunch of stats or whatever, but I don't know if it's really ever going to reach the levels that Elvin Hayes and those sort of guys did. So
right, yeah, exactly. And then the Rockets, he is 6th all-time in minutes. 13 players have crushed that 15,000 threshold. He had 4-time All-Star appearances, never was on the All-NBA team. He's we'll get a few more details about his career with the Rockets, but he ranks 10th in team history in win shares. In terms of importance, team history, he's clearly behind, the top 5 who, I would say Olajuwon, James Harden, Moses Malone, Calvin Murphy, and Rui Tomjanovich. And then, I think he starts to be in the conversation with Yao at number 6, although I would put him behind Yao overall.
Yeah, I would as well.
But then I don't know if there's anybody who I would say is definitely ahead of him. You're talking about guys who were more like role players who were there for a long time.
Right, your Otis Thorpes, your Steve Francis's, your Kenny Smith type guys, which
Robert
those
Reed,
guys. Those guys aren't there.
Rodney McRae, yeah. So you probably, I would say, somewhere around 7th. If you look at kind of his Rockets career. His jersey is retired by the Bulls, not by the Rockets. His most productive Rockets year were actually the beginning, which was in San Diego. Played there from 69 to 71. Led the franchise to its first playoff appearance in his rookie season. Also led the league in scoring. Definitely was the first star in franchise history. Did play 1 year with the Rockets after they moved to Houston. But it wasn't really, it was not a good team, only 34 wins. He feuded with the Coach Tex winner at the time. Not really a great homecoming for he played college, of course, at the University of Houston, was a huge college basketball star. And they played a bunch of games away from Houston because there were a lack of arena options there when they first moved. Then the Rockets franchise, was pretty mediocre after they traded him in 72, until they were kind of gifted Moses Malone. But even then, the only, real good deep playoff run they had was like a year where they finished 42-40. And then he returned to Houston in 82 after the team had come off that finals appearance in 81, kind of had one solid season there before the team lost career and they began tanking, and he was relegated to a bench role trying to reach the 50,000 minutes mark. So I don't know if he quite did enough to really warrant a jersey retirement for the Rockets. I don't know if you have any strong opinions about that.
Yeah, I mean, I tend to not really have super strong opinions about jersey retirements. Curtis Harris, though, our friend Curtis Harris, who is doing a great series on his newsletter right now about those. But I never knew, because it's not I like things that have set criteria or whatever, and it's just basically every franchise just decides, retire everybody, or some franchise we're retiring nobody. So it's hard to say exactly, but you're probably right that I don't know that he does elicit my initial reaction of should they retire his number is it's generally no. And I don't know that I don't know that anything really would turn me on to the yes, other than like some sentimental value for him or something like that. But like you said, yeah, his big, the most of the big years that he does in that franchise are in San Diego, so that's always a tough thing when you're retiring a guy's number, when a lot of the stuff they do, or one of the important stuff they do, took place in another city. Because for whatever reasons, like those franchises don't really embrace that. We've talked about that a lot in many other shows, but like when you move from another town, like that town doesn't really embrace what you, even though it's the same franchise, the same jersey, the same whatever, they tend to not embrace it as much. It doesn't seem to count as much. Then, oh no, you did it for us and for our city and our team or whatever. So that's always a thing. And like you said, it's not like Houston was really like a bastion of success when he was there. So I don't think I have an issue with that. But like if they wanted to say tomorrow, hey, we're retiring his number, I'd also be like, yeah, fine, whatever. Like, you know what I mean? I don't care.
Yeah.
Retire them all. Retire every number. It's fine.
I want to also know a snapshot of where Elvin Hayes ranked in NBA history when he retired, just for some trivia. He was first in minutes played, as we mentioned, 50,000. Wilt was about 2,000 behind him. Of course, Kareem would pass that mark, fairly soon afterward. Win shares, he was 14th all time. Total rebounds, he was third all time, and total points, he was also third all time. So ranked very highly on, some. Obviously, had a long career. Played the most minutes, and had a lot of longevity for the time, and still, of course, sixth all time in minutes played. But I thought it was kind of interesting. Maybe higher ranked in some of those things than you might expect, given where his reputation is.
All right, so let's move on to our next guy here, Artis Gilmore. This is a fun one here. Sorry, are you done with Elvin?
I am done with Elvin.
Okay,
yes.
Sorry, I didn't want to cut you off there and move over to
good. Yeah.
Artis Gilmore. So let's do that. Artis Gilmore, 14th all time in minutes. Kentucky Colonels is the first spot where he gets the first franchise, 17,449 minutes there with the Kentucky Colonels. 5-time All-Star, led the ABA in rebounding in each of his 5 years with the Colonels. 1972 ABA MVP and Rookie of the Year in the same season. 1975 ABA Championship. I mean, yeah, the list of accomplishments are numerous for Artis Gilmore as a Kentucky Colonel. And as far as his importance in that franchise's history, obviously doesn't have a lot of history after Artis is there, but I'd say he's definitely number one. If you want to make a case for Dan Issel as number one, that's fine. I would listen to that, but I think I'd probably put Artis number one. But I don't know that many people are going to be arguing with us or very passionate about the Kentucky Colonels much anymore. So.
Maybe, yeah. You maybe got some Louisville listeners who are big on the Colonels who are like, how dare you not name Dan Issel as number two. Yeah. No, I think, Louis Dampier fans maybe out there are like, how dare you not name Louis Dampier, number one. But I think it's pretty clearly Artis or Issel. I would agree. Artis kind of leans here. And, as we get into it, I think the Artis is the first player where I think this really affects to a certain degree, because I think the other players, maybe Hayes doesn't get like the total credit for his career, but, certainly the Bullets, I think, have honored him appropriately. And, and so forth. But I feel like, Artis with, half of his career coming with a franchise that doesn't exist anymore, I think the kind of the importance that he had overall is maybe muted a bit because of, kind of the split in histories, and also the fact, that one of the teams that he played for doesn't exist anymore. Right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we'll go to the Bulls here now, too, which is a very interesting debate as far as Artis Gilmore. There's another guy later, too, with the Chicago Bulls that I think it kind of ties in with Artis Gilmore, but we'll get to him in a bit. But Artis Gilmore, 16,777 minutes with the Bulls. 6 seasons in Chicago, 1977 and 1982. In that time, a 4-time All-Star. Never made the All-NBA team, though. Unfortunately, a man named Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, another man named Bill Walton, and also Moses Malone were also playing his position at the same time. So a lot of good centers in the league at this time. But we should note, though, that he is tied for 8th in box plus minus with Bob Lanier from 1977-82 in that time period. So very good numbers for him there. 7th in PR and 4th in win shares. So, and Artis Gilmore too, he's a guy who win shares wise, like fucking loves him. Win shares loves Artis Gilmore. And you're always kind of surprised when you see the names on there, because for whatever reason, he doesn't come up as a guy you would initially think of like being, a top 5 player in a time period, but he absolutely was. I mean, he no doubt was. And win shares kind of bears that out. As well. Only 2 playoff appearances with the Bulls, and I think that probably hurts his case a little bit as well. But yeah, he is 4th in franchise history in total win shares in Chicago Bulls history. But that gives to this debate about importance in team history. So now he's 4th in franchise history in win shares, but I mean, there's no doubt he's behind Jordan, he's behind Pippen. Those are no doubters. not even a debate there. The issue, though, is the importance that the Bulls took on in the 90s and the popularity that they kind of rode from the 90s on, still to today, to today. It makes it tough to pick any 70s Bull or any 80s pre-Jordan Bull as being really important to the team history, because it's kind of out of sight, out of mind for that era. Having grown up in Chicago and gone to many Bulls games. I mean, Artis Gilmore, they show him on the Jumbotron during the intro. You see his number up there, but he's kind of a non-factor. I mean, I think if you polled an audience at the United Center and asked them, hey, importance of team history, where does Artis Gilmore rank? Obviously Jordan, obviously Pippen, but I think you'd also have the same debates for guys like a Kukoc, a Dennis Rodman, a Horace Grant. Even when you go into the 2000s and the 2010s, your Kirk Heinrichs, your Derrick Roses, your Joakim Noahs, those sort of guys, I think all are higher than him on those lists. And I don't know if that's necessarily fair. I don't know that I would rank him that way, but definitely, like, in the public conscious, I think Artis Gilmore would be solidly behind a lot of those guys. And I think, unfortunately, for right or for wrong, and we'll talk about this a little bit with Chet Walker in a bit, I think he's solidly behind guys like Norm Van Leer, Jerry Sloan, and Bob Love in, like, how the franchise would kind of consider those guys, which again is not right. But all those guys, like Jerry Sloan, became a coach and became kind of a figure in Chicago. Bob Love worked for the team forever. Norm Van Leer was like our main broadcaster type guy. So that always kind of clouds it to the point where I think, like, if you ask people, Artis would maybe not even be in the top 10, but I think that's ridiculous because he should be. But it's the 70s and 80s Bulls just don't resonate with really anybody, so it's always tough with guys like that.
Yeah, no, I think you said it really, really well. And because honestly, like, if you look at how important he was to the team's success and how good he was, like, you could even make a case for third.
For sure.
Put him there, but he definitely, you could make that case. But then again, I would say in fans' eyes and maybe even the team's eyes, he could be outside the top 10. So it's a really weird one. And I think because his years with the Bulls were larger disappointment. I mean, he kind of came in from the ABA. He was one of the top. He'd been one of the top 5 players in the ABA since he'd been in the league, and he was the prize of the expansion draft, not the expansion draft, but whatever the term, the merger draft, whatever that the term for that was. He obviously came in. The Bulls had the first pick. They selected him. He was kind of there to turn the franchise around. And they had a couple pretty good years, but they never really they had kind of a tough time rebuilding after the all the guys who were part of the early 70s team, kind of got older or left the team. There wasn't much left besides Gilmore and, Van Leer. You had a couple of solid seasons there. And, they had one kind of, fairly good year after, rebuilding with, like a, young Reggie Theus and, a couple other guys. But that team, for whatever reason, kind of fell apart really quickly. And, then things were bad up until Jordan came along. So, he kind of reflects a disappointing era. So, So that hurts him, but that's kind of the sucky thing about this is because obviously he was amazing in the ABA. He's one of the greatest ABA players of all time, but there's nobody really there to push his legacy in the Bulls. His number isn't retired by the Bulls. He's not really considered a hugely important player in franchise history. So that's, obviously sucks for him. And obviously, he's a Hall of Famer. He's, it took him a long time to be a Hall of Famer when, he seems like when you look at his total career, it seems like
should be no doubter. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. He should have been in there, first ballot or, close to it. But didn't get in there for a long time. So it kind of sucks that, he's definitely, a top 50 contender if you consider his ABA career, but he also, not discussed in those terms. So, multiple reasons for that. I mean, if he played for the NBA for a different team, in the early 70s, then he wouldn't have all of those problems. But definitely, it definitely he's looked upon very differently than somebody who, would have had the exact same resume, but would have done it all for, one or two franchises in his career.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. And also, Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say, yeah, and like, when it comes to the Bulls, and you mentioned that too, it was an idea of, oh my God, there's finally hope for this, destitute franchise or whatever. And then it's like, it's Artis Gilmore, and he's still really good, but he's not like as good. So, he gets the rig of artists, nickname. And it's always sad too, because like they show his clip, like in like the Bulls intro, and it's like, Artis Gilmore hitting like a really beautiful looking hook shot, and they pan the crowd, and there's like 7 people in the crowd, and you're like, oh no, like Jesus, like it was really bad there for a while. And he's kind of like the figurehead of like one of the not quite, because they had their run in the 70s, and yay, Bob Love and Norvell Lear and Jerry Sloan, and then like here comes Artis, and it's like, oh man, and then it's just like, doesn't work, and yeah, it unfortunately kind of paints him as a bad picture. And yeah, unless the Bulls are going to really rally behind Artis Gilmore, he's never going to get really, I think, his proper due. Sure. in league history, and that kind of stinks. But he's not far off with the Spurs, we should say, too. Pretty close with the Spurs, too. 12,387 minutes played with the San Antonio Spurs as well, which I think was kind of surprising, but I think speaks more to like just his minutes load, too, that he's a guy who played as many minutes as he possibly could. So
he had some good years there, too. I mean, he was in his mid-30s by then, but they had a couple years where they played They played the Lakers pretty tough in the playoffs, and had some good seasons before Gervin aged out, and and they had to rebuild. But he definitely had a solid run there as well. So, who do we have next?
Next is Buck Williams. Talk Buck Williams here, 26th in all-time minutes, which I think is kind of surprising as well for somebody like a Buck Williams stature, but he played a lot of minutes, man. New Jersey Nets, 23,100 minutes as a net. As we mentioned above, he is the Nets franchise leader in win shares, 3-time All-Star, 1982 Rookie of the Year, 1983 All-NBA team, 4-time All-Defense. Like, he's got a really great resume, but unfortunately, like, importance in team history, I don't know that Buck Williams really has. I don't know, maybe if there is any New Jersey Net fans out there that like legit like dyed in the wool New Jersey Nets fans, like maybe they could argue it, but I think he has a strong case for third. As we mentioned, he's the best player on 5 different playoff teams, led the best NBA net, the best Nets team in the NBA, prior to Jason Kidd. So I think that's worth something, but I think solidly behind, very, very solidly behind Jason Kidd and Julius Erving as far as importance in team history, which probably isn't right because he did a lot for that franchise, but I think it more speaks to the franchise than Buck Williams specifically.
Yeah.
So
I think he's a really good player, but obviously not a superstar. Never reached the heights that those guys. But third. I think honestly, it's more about the franchise that somebody like Buck Williams, really good player, but not a Hall of Famer, not anybody outside of one All NBA appearance who was really a big star. The fact that he's your third best player in franchise history says something more about the team than anything. But had some highlights. The Nets in the year 2-3 years in the early 80s actually were a pretty good team. They had the big upset of the 84 Sixers. He has one of the biggest upsets in NBA history at that point. So, definitely had a strong year. I think the Blazers years are really interesting to evaluate. Obviously he was traded there. 1990 season, was part of 2 finals runs. He's obviously took kind of a back seat there, but had his most team success there. He's actually 7th in franchise history in win shares, which kind of surprised me. 11th overall in minutes played, and he's kind of a hard one for me to really get a handle on where kind of he would stand in terms of importance in team history, because he's definitely. He's definitely behind, like a Clyde Drexler or Damian Lillard or, Bill Walton or even, somebody like Terry Porter, or Lamarcus Aldridge. Like, he's definitely not in the top 5. And then, he's kind of competing with guys like, Jerome Kersey, Sabonis, Rasheed Wallace, even like a Brandon Roy, who obviously didn't have longevity, but was a stout player for a while. He's kind of right along there. So, I would say bottom half of the top 10, but kind of a hard one for me to judge.
Yeah, and have you watched the? There was a documentary on NBA TV not that long ago about the Blazers. Did you watch that one?
Oh no, I haven't seen that one.
It's really good if you get a chance, and definitely recommend anybody who's watching this or listening to this. I don't know where you can. I DVR like all NBA TV documentaries, but
the '90s Blazers, I'm assuming.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, focuses on them. It touches a little briefly on the '70s and that sort of stuff, but most of the story is about the '90s Blazers and kind of how they didn't win the title. But one of the things that kind of made me sort of change my opinion on Buck Williams is the interviews with all those guys where they talked about when they acquired Buck Williams in 1990, they were like, okay, now we're ready to go. And the thing that really, I think, inspired them is that Buck was like, look, I'm here to win, man. So like, I don't care, because they're thinking, oh man, how are we going to integrate this guy? He scored 20 points a game. He wants the ball in his hands and all that sort of stuff. And he, to his credit, was just like, nah, I'm good. Like, just, integrate me into your team, but let's go out there and win. And obviously they reached, unforeseen heights, makes 2 NBA finals as a member there. So, and really his numbers do hold up, but I do wonder if, like, had he been on a different team in the last half a year or just stayed with the Nets or whatever, what we would think about him, because he does become, like, as you said, kind of the third or fourth guy that you think of on those Blazers teams, but production wise, he's right up there with those guys. And in some cases, even higher than those guys. So it definitely like hurts his kind of importance in team history because he takes a back seat. But I think he was supremely important to them becoming, what they were in those early, 90s and making those 2 NBA finals runs. But, really, really good documentary. And yeah, I gained a lot of appreciation for Buck Williams by watching that and hearing, all those guys, Clyde and Cliff and Terry Porter and those talk about how Buck was like the guy that once he came in and once he was all bought in, that they were like, oh man, like sky's the limit for this team. We're ready to go. And he really was, tremendous asset to that team. And the success, speaks for itself.
Mm-hmm. So next we have Dan Issel, 29th all time in NBA ABA minutes. He had 25,000 with the Nuggets, second in franchise history. 2 All-Star appearances with the Nuggets, 1 with the ABA, 1 with the NBA. He's the first in team history in win shares. Also led the team, along with David Thompson, to the 76 ABA finals, their only finals appearance in either league. Interesting in importance in team history, and I'm really surprised. I'd forgotten that he only had 2 All-Star appearances for the Nuggets, and part of that I think is because as we talked about earlier, the center position was so stacked, especially in the Western Conference at the time. You obviously have Kareem, you have Moses Malone for the years he was with the Rockets, and they were in the West. You have, Bob Lanier, a few other guys who are all, competing for that. But even so, he was a strong player throughout the early, even into 83 and 84. So you'd be a little surprised he didn't get another All-Star appearances. But he was, a really productive player on some teams that were really strong. So I would say right along with Alex English, arguably number 1. Number 2, with David Thompson and Carmelo kind of right underneath it. Yeah, I think Thompson being the best player out of those guys at his peak, both the longevity, I would say, English and Issel, kind of right there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And with the Colonels, he is, 5-time All-Star all 5 seasons, was Rookie of the Year in 71, led the team to their ABA championship in 75, led the league in scoring in his debut year, and average over 30 points per game his second year. So, and again, as we talked about, he and Artis are kind of neck and neck in team history. Not really much to add for that.
Yeah, no, I think that it does it pretty well. This is an interesting one here, a fun name to kind of debate here.
One more thing.
Sorry.
Unlike Gilmore, I do think because he's, even though I think he's a little underrated, and the Nuggets are obviously not necessarily a premier franchise that gets a lot of attention, but I would say obviously he's been retired by the team. I think he's considered. His importance in team history, I think, is considered with the Nuggets. He kind of lucked out because things went better for him in Denver, or he stuck around in Denver for long enough where, with Gilmore, didn't have the same experience with the Bulls. So I think, Issel, I think his legacy, benefits from that where, again, Gilmore's, I think, is hurt by that. I think kind of a little bit of a difference there.
No, absolutely. I think, it felt like, Artis kind of faded into obscurity in the NBA, which isn't quite right because obviously he didn't, whereas Issel felt like he just kind of he jumped in the NBA and was still an important figure and was still well known and was still kind of featured and all that sort of stuff. Where again, like even though their numbers may be pretty similar, Artis might be a little bit higher. I'm right with you. Where it felt like Issel, had more of a stamp in the NBA than Artis Gilmore had. Which again, whether fair or not, it definitely feels like that is definitely the case. So
sure.
All right, let's move on here to a pretty interesting guy here, Paul Gasol. So 32nd in all-time minutes for Paul Gasol. Grizzlies, Memphis Grizzlies, only Memphis. He never played for the Vancouver Grizzlies, by the way, for people. I was kind of surprised by that, too. I felt like he maybe had 1 year in Vancouver, but no minutes in Vancouver, only Memphis. 16,904 minutes for Paul Gasol. One-time All-Star as Memphis Grizzly. Does that surprise you that he only made it one time, or is it kind of makes sense given his competing with your Dirks and your Kevin Garnett's and your Tim Duncans and those sort of types in the Western Conference, but still only one in Memphis? That just seems kind of criminal, right?
Yeah, I was surprised. Although, it did take a little while for him to emerge as like a really good player. I mean, he was like solid his first couple years, but it was like year 4 where he really became an excellent player and definitely worthy of All-Star recognition. And as you mentioned, like he's dealing with he's behind obviously guys like Dirk, Kevin Garnett, even Chris Webber. There was a really good crop of power forwards at the time in the league. Didn't really play center primarily until he went to the Lakers. So I can kind of see where the reason why he didn't quite get that recognition.
Absolutely. But otherwise, 2002 NBA Rookie of the Year, third in franchise win shares right now at 53.8. Only brother Mark, 77.4, and Mike Conley at 71.4 are higher than Gasol in Memphis, Grizzlies franchise history. As far as importance in team history, you could really argue one. You probably should argue one with him, but I would say he's solidly behind his brother. I think Mark has probably made a little bit more of a legacy in Memphis than Pau did. I believe Mike Conley, definitely I would put over Pau, and then definitely like Zach Randolph, just for what he symbolized for that franchise, coming to the franchise, immediately kind of taking them to heights that they had never been to, good playoff runs, and he's kind of the figurehead of those playoff runs. But I'd say, I mean, in terms of production-wise, Paul Gasol should probably be number one. But I think, when we talk about sentimental-wise or kind of the way that maybe fans would see it, I think he would probably be third or fourth. I think definitely behind guys like his brother, Conley, and then maybe arguably, Zach Randolph as well.
Yeah, I think I put him ahead of Randolph, but I would put him behind his brother and Conley. I kind of thought he was in Memphis a little bit longer. At first, before I kind of looked at it more closely. So I would say that given the longevity, given the greater team success, although he did lead, Pau did lead the team to its first success at all. And obviously they had a lot of bad years before they went to Memphis and before they got at all good. But that was more fleeting and the grit and grind era was much more sustained and obviously had a lot more fan support. So I think about third, I think, is probably about right for him.
And then, of course, Lakers, 15,326, just 326 minutes over here. Thank God he got those minutes in there. Three-time All-Star, three-time All-NBA as a Laker. The problem, though, is, importance in team history. It's the Lakers. So, a great legacy, helped them win 2 titles. But, Kareem, Magic, Kobe, Mike and Shaq, Jerry West, Elgin Baylor, Wilt Chamberlain. Sorry. He's somewhere in the 10-15, I guess. But, at that point, you're just naming names, you know what I mean? It's
right. Yeah. I mean, he's, then you're talking about guys, like Gail Goodrich or, or Worthy, he's kind of in that club somewhere, again, maybe even 15 to 20. I would guess more, 10 to 15, because I mean, he was, I think, pretty clearly the second best player on the teams on the late 10s Lakers teams, behind Kobe. I mean, some people think he was even better than Kobe. I'm not going that far, but I mean, he was really good. He was really important to those teams, and so I think he's definitely, if he'd done it for almost any other franchise, he'd be one of their, he'd be in their top 5 history right. For sure. But with the Lakers, or the Celtics, basically, he's not going to do that.
No, definitely not. So we'll move on. Next guy here, we mentioned him a lot when we were talking about Artis Gilmore, but Chet Walker is a very interesting one as well. 104th in all-time minutes. And I think it's pretty interesting. A lot of the other guys we mentioned are like top 30, top 15, and that sort of thing. Buck Williams 26, Dan Issel 29th, Paul Gasol 32nd. What was Artis Gilmore 14th? Elvin Hayes 6th. Jason Kidd 5th, Kareem 1st. We have to go all the way to 104th to get Chet Walker, but he does do it here. Nats, obviously the Syracuse Nationals and the Philadelphia 76ers, 17,624 minutes for Chet Walker in that franchise. While he's there, 3-time All-Star, 1967, of course, NBA champion. As far as his importance in team history, I mean, Curtis Harris might get upset, and I'm a little upset by it too, but I think he probably should be higher than he is, but I think most people would probably put him solidly behind, obviously, Julius Erving. I think solidly behind Charles Barkley. I think solidly behind Allen Iverson. I think you probably have to put him behind Wilt Chamberlain. And then you get guys like Dolph Schayes and Hal Greer, who, again, have, I think, better cases than Chet Walker. It stinks because Chet is a very, very important part of that franchise's history, but they've had some pretty damn good players in their history. So it is tough to figure out where Chet would really stand.
Yeah, I think if he'd been there longer, I would. He would have obviously have a higher rank. I think you're about right on where you've got him. Yeah, I would say somewhere in the 7 to 10 range. I think he's behind. Yeah, I think he's really behind the guys that you named in terms of team history. I mean, even he's around, sort of like a Billy Cunningham level. Obviously, those late 60s teams had a lot of really good players. Yeah. There. So, in terms of the 80s guys, obviously Moses didn't have a long run there, but he obviously won the MVP and was there for that championship. Although obviously Walker was part of the 67 championship and one of the greatest teams of all time. So, I would say somewhere kind of 7 to 10 range would be where I'm thinking.
And then as far as the Bulls for Chet Walker, 15,809 minutes played as a Chicago Bull, 4-time All-Star. Interesting note here, never averaged less than 19 points per game as a Chicago Bull, including his final season, 19.2 points per game. And he, of course, retires at age 34 pretty famously, says, now I'm done with this thing. This sucks. I'm out. So leaves at age 34. Third in Bulls all-time win shares at 67, trails only Jordan and Pippen. But his importance in team history, I mean, honestly, it's probably higher than Artis Gilmore, but it's the same thing with Artis Gilmore where it's they just get engulfed by the 90s and the 2000s Bulls, where I just don't know that many people really know or care about Chet Walker, which stinks. And again, you have the guys, like I mentioned, the Norm Van Leers, the Jerry Sloans, and your Bob Loves that I think chart a little bit higher than Chet Walker, which stinks because Chet Walker was a huge part of some very good Bulls teams and arguably one of the best parts of those entire teams. But yeah, I think I don't know where I'd rank him. Honestly, I think he's probably out of the entire conversation when we talk about this, which again stinks, similar to Philly.
Yeah, this is another tough one. And, we already talked about it with, we already talked about it with Artis, but I think he probably was the best player on those early 70s Bulls teams, and obviously outside of the 90s teams, those are the teams that had the greatest success in franchise history. The first teams didn't really have any success, but they never won a championship. They never made a finals. They came close, but they were good, but not that good. So. And it's kind of a shared credit between him and Van Leer and those guys. So yeah, I think he could be anywhere. You could anywhere from 4th or 5th to 9th to 10th. I mean, you kind of put him on that list. And again, for the reasons we've talked about, I think he's behind there in terms of how much people care about him. But again, we don't care about how much people care about him. We care about how good he was and how genuinely important he was. Yeah. So yeah, I would say. Probably around 5th or 6th for me.
That's fair. Yeah, I think that's where he probably should be, and I'm going to get in a bunch of arguments with Bulls fans. All right, when we can return to games, I'm going to find somebody and get in an argument with them about Artis Gilmore and Chet Walker, and I'll let you know how it goes. So.
All right, well, do that and let me know how that goes. Yeah. Chet, I was looking to see if I could find. I'm trying to find the single season leaders for win shares for 48 because Chet randomly one year he had a season in which he went from at age 30, he had 178 wins for 48, and then age 31, he had 268. He had a huge leap. 268. 268 has to be like top 20 or 30 all time. I'm guessing. Maybe that's not quite right, but Basketball References, I'm not immediately finding it. So maybe you can dig that one out.
Yeah, let me see. Let me take a little bit of time here and see what I can do.
I'll talk about Dave DeBusschere in the meantime. So, 131st all time in minutes. He barely crosses this threshold for two teams, but for the Pistons, he had 15,235. For the Knicks, 15,967. I think a lot of people forget that he played for the Pistons, but he was a three-time All-Star there. He was probably most famously was player coach for the team at age 25. But I think really, in terms of legacy for team history, obviously there are the 80s Pistons, Isaiah Dumars, Lambier, pretty solidly, I think, behind those guys. Looking at the 2000s teams with, Billups, Rasheed Wallace, and Ben Wallace, frankly, probably more important than Rasheed, maybe even like a Tayshaun Prince. And then, kind of guys who were big stars in eras where the team wasn't a big success, Bob Lanier, Grant Hill, Dave Bing. I would say he's at best kind of in the, somewhere between the 8 to 10 range, maybe even outside of the top 10. Any strong feelings about that?
Yeah, he's a guy that, when you put in the notes there, David Bush, and I'm like, where the hell did they put all the Pistons, huh? 15,000 minutes, huh? Very close to his Knicks minutes, but when you talk about importance of where he is, in Knicks history and his importance to that franchise's history and that franchise's success compared to the Pistons, it's pretty tough. But yeah, I think solidly behind almost everybody that we mentioned there: Isaiah Dumars, Lambier, Billups, Rasheed / Ben Wallace, Tayshaun Prince, Bob Lanier, Grant Hill, Dave Bing. I guess you can put him in those mix, but he just doesn't feel like a Piston at all, right? He just has no legacy as a Detroit Piston. So I don't know whether right or wrong. It's just it was kind of oh wow, David DeBusschere played a lot of minutes at Detroit. I never knew that or cared or never. I don't know. It's just strange. Yeah,
and he went to high school in Detroit. He played college in Detroit, so he does have a Detroit background, obviously. But yeah, and the franchise was pretty bad in the '60s for the most part. So not not much of a legacy there. Obviously, changes with the Knicks. He's part of the great Knicks teams of the early '70s. Was a 5-time All-Star with the franchise, 2 championships. But then he kind of fits there is interesting because much like the '70s Bulls, but obviously with greater team success, those Knicks are thought of as a lot of really good players who were part of that. Obviously, Frazier and Reed and Bill Bradley and later Earl Monroe and the other key guys who are part of that, Lucas and those guys and then in terms of the great players in team history, obviously I think Patrick Ewing, I think for most people is number one, and then you've got guys who were there early 50s guys who aren't considered that important in team history, but to us, Gallatin or Carl Braun, more modern guys like Carmelo. There aren't a lot of huge, great periods, unfortunately for the franchise in Knicks history where you can kind of go to. So I would say top 10, but definitely bottom half of the top 10 overall.
Yeah, I think that's about where I'd put him. And yeah, it's again like a guy who I think he runs into the issue of. There are some guys that I think have profound Knicks legacies, like you said, like a Walt Frazier, Willis Reed, even like a Patrick Ewing type. So I don't know that you could ever compete with those guys. But then the rest of the guys after those are just kind of a big list of dudes. You know what I mean? Where I think you can make a case for him in that list as well. And several other guys that you mentioned. So I'm right with you on that. But I think that's about where his ranking should be. An update on the Chet Walker season. That's 55th all time in a single season. So pretty good. As you mentioned, this Kareem Abdul-Jabbar guy, pretty good. He's got the top 2. He's got 3 of the top 4 all-time win shares. His top season, 1972, .340 for that. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Will probably has a lot of those, and Jordan has a lot. I'm sure there's probably a small number of guys who have had better seasons than that. So.
Oh, yeah. Like, really quickly, just glancing over the names. It's Kareem, Wilt, LeBron, Jordan, Curry, David Robinson, Kevin Durant, Giannis, Chris Paul, David Robinson, James Harden, Larry Faust, Dirk, Oscar Robertson, Anthony Davis, Kevin Garnett, Magic, Barkley, Mickelson, Malone, Rudy Gobert, and then Chet Walker. So, yeah.
Okay.
We're talking, those are all-time greats there. So
Rudy Gobert, yes.
We're talking all-time legends. Yeah. And also Rudy Gobert's on the list, too. So that's cool. Yeah.
So, all right, so now we have I believe it's 9 players who have met our threshold, and there's a 10th player who could get there, but I'm guessing probably won't. Lamarcus Aldridge for the Blazers, 22,972 minutes, third in team history. For the Spurs, he has slightly over 11,500 minutes. He could get there with 3 more seasons of averaging 1,200 minutes, per season, which seems doable. However, he's a free agent after the 21 season, so I don't know. Do we think the Spurs are going to sign up for a few more to the Lamarcus Aldridge experience, or does that seem like?
I mean, I wouldn't, but they might. I think.
Yeah.
I don't think so. I think. I don't know. I don't know. The Spurs are weird now. I have no good read on what the Spurs do anymore. But
he really just wants to be there as like a guy who is a role player and plays there for cheap. Wants to play for cheap, maybe. But he's 34. I mean, he's he's still a solid player, but not a really good one. I guess he averaged I guess he's still averaging 18.9 points per game and still shoots it all right. So maybe he's all right. He's averaging 39% from 3 this year. Which,
So maybe they're just fine with, he's the baseline that you're going to get from Lamarcus Aldridge is, I guess,
Finally shooting three a game this year. I didn't realize that. I hadn't played too close of attention with Spurs this season for whatever reason. So anyway, so he's the only guy active player has any chance of getting there, but it's super unlikely. Just a few guys who came extremely close, but not quite. Wilt Chamberlain got there with the Warriors, but was 185 minutes short with the Lakers. Carmelo got there with the Nuggets, but 187 minutes short with the Knicks. As you point out here, it's not impossible that Melo finds his way back on with the Knicks.
I mean,
he gets 187 minutes. So yeah,
of all the franchises that would reacquire Carmelo Anthony and allow him to get this, it's the New York Knicks. So, I mean, there's hope. There's hope there. And 187 minutes, that's like not, I mean, you could definitely get that. That's like, hey, Carmelo, you're the missing piece. And then he, bricks a bunch of threes and they go, actually, never mind, you're not the missing piece. But he still gets that minutes limit. So, hopefully we can update this in future years and add Carmelo to there. It's not impossible. I will say that. It is not impossible. Wilt, that's going to be tough. I don't think that's going to happen with Wilt, but I do think Carmelo is a possibility. So,
probably not.
Wilt's going to be a tough get. Yeah, Wilt's a tough get these days. So.
Yeah. Larry Nance, just over 15,000 with the Suns and 34 minutes short with the Cavs.
Okay, we can do this. Think about it. It's the Cavs. They stink. Who cares anyway, right?
Right.
They have his son playing on the team.
Right.
I mean, everybody loves Ken Griffey Jr. and Ken Griffey Sr. being on the same team, and everyone's waiting for LeBron and Bronny. Well, the Cavs could do it. They can get out ahead of this LeBron thing and say, you know what? Who cares about Bron and Bronny? We got Larry Nance Jr., Larry Nance Sr., baby. Yeah, let's go. 34 minutes? That's one night. You know what I mean? We're fine. He's 61. It'd be a rough night. He'd need some ice afterwards, but I think we can do that.
Yeah. Or, split that up into 5,
No, one night. Larry Nance night.
No. Larry Nance night, 34 minutes. Yeah.
He's like, guys, I'm like above 60 and I haven't played basketball in 25 years, but,
Hey, yeah.
34 minutes. I mean, you could run up and down the court 34 minutes. Come on.
Yeah, right.
I couldn't, but he could. I'm sure he's in better shape than I am. So.
Yeah, exactly. And then Jeff Hornacek. 270 minutes short with the Jazz and 620 minutes short with the Suns.
I'm not doing that. Yeah, that's
tough. Not gonna happen. Yeah. So, all right. So other franchises. I want to hit a few that surprised me with. We'll just talk about the numbers and then a few that were really big surprises. The Hawks have 17 who have reached that threshold. My biggest surprises were Bill Bridges and Josh Smith. I don't know how I didn't realize the 23,000 minutes of Josh Smith enduring that as my Hawks fandom, but that's a lot of minutes.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised by that as well, but yeah, those names are kind of. I get, man, Josh Smith. It just seems like I love Josh Smith, but I guess he did play there a long time, but it's just like. Yeah, it's just I don't know.
It was for a while I loved him, and then it just became tough to endure the way that he played. But anyway, the Celtics, 21 players. I was slightly surprised that Robert Parrish had more Celtics minutes than Larry Bird, only by like 500, but still not surprised by that. So
yeah, that did catch me a little bit as well. Not that Robert Parrish has more career minutes because he obviously played until he was 49 years old, but but to have more Celtics minutes than Larry Bird is definitely surprising.
Right. So the Cavs have 9 players. Danny Ferry is a slight surprise there, but not really. The Charlotte franchise at 4 players. No one was really a big surprise there. The Pacers, 16 players. Biggest surprise, Vern Fleming.
Yeah, what? You made this up. This is impossible.
Almost 23,000 minutes, third in franchise history.
No, he didn't. There's no way.
Had you heard of Vern Fleming? Honestly, had you heard of Vern Fleming before we?
I've heard the name, but like I've never thought of. Like I've heard the name or I've seen the name, but I've never once given it more than like 2 seconds of thought. So I hope you're going to let me know all about Vern Fleming right here, right now.
Well, I tried searching for Vern Fleming on YouTube, and you get basically nothing. There's an alleged game-winning shot that turns out to be nothing. That's a false.
What's the video?
It's just randomly like he's going for a layup or something, and then it cuts off. So it's
at some point in that game he had the game winner. This isn't the game winner, but
apparently yes. It apparently got them in the playoffs. I was confused by it, so I moved on. Yes, he was a gold medalist on the '84 Olympic team. He had 12 seasons with the Pacers from '85 to '95. Actually, mostly a starter, averaged 13.6 points per game his first 7 seasons, so played a decent amount. Yeah. Came off the bench in his later careers from 92 to 95. The Pacers missed the playoffs 4 out of his 5 first seasons, then lost in the first round 4 straight years, but they finally made the Eastern Conference Finals in his final 2 Pacers seasons. So the team got better as he came along. Obviously, Reggie Miller came of age, and they had the Davises and Rick Smits and all that. Basically, he was a guy, he played NBA basketball pretty competently for a solid period of time, 15.1 career PER, which is, pretty much average. Pretty much, you look at every, stat that a guard can have, advanced or otherwise, pretty much just average for a guard in every respect. He was good enough to start for an okay to good NBA team for 7 years and not get replaced, but he was never good enough to be honored by the league for pretty much anything outside of having one Player of the Week award in the 1990 season. So that is Vern Fleming. He existed.
Fleming.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm looking at pictures of Vern Fleming. I think I might have a Vern Fleming basketball card, and that's how I'm looking at this card, and like I distinctly remember this card, and that I think is the only memory in my brain I have of Vern Fleming. But yeah, what a very innocuous NBA player that somehow played a lot of minutes on a pretty good team for a lot of time. So good for him.
Pretty much anything that I could have known about the Pacers from that era are basically blocked by Dick Versace. If you look at a photo of Dick Versace, pretty much just blocks anything else that I could possibly remember about, late 80s Pacers. So there you are. Then the Braves Clippers, they have 6. Loy Vaught, kind of a surprise, but again, you kind of know that he's one of the guys who stuck around during this time.
Shit franchise that nobody wanted to ever be with. So
right.
I'm actually surprised there's 6 people that actually hit the list, but obviously two are of recent vintage. Of course, your DeAndre Jordans, your Blake Griffins. The other 2 are Elton Brand and Corey Maggette from that era. And then, Randy Smith and Loy Vaught. But I just love that. Nobody in the last half of the 80s, nobody but Vaught in the 90s. What a dumpster fire that franchise was for so long. Nobody. They were on forever. 6 people.
The Heat had 4, no surprises. The Wolves had 4, not really big surprise, but Andrew Wiggins was 3rd and Doug West was 4th. Also, just obviously not a great franchise. In the past.
You're good. You got it.
The New Orleans franchise, no one of note. The Thunder Sonics, franchise, there's 12 overall. No one individually that was a surprise. Worth noting that Kevin Durant and Nick Collison are the only ones who played for both franchises, if you consider them separate histories. Collison had about 7,400 of his minutes were with the Sonics, so more of them with the Thunder, but a significant chunk with the Sonics. If you split them up, he wouldn't be on the list. Not that we would be totally missing Nick Collison from this list if we had to think.
Yeah, we could probably just lie and say that he, just take off the list. I don't think anybody would care. So
fair enough. The Magic at 5. No one a big surprise. The Royals Kings with 12. Probably the biggest surprise there would be the last choice with Eddie Johnson, who I don't really think of as primarily a king, even though he did the majority of his career there. I think of him, I guess, as more of a son.
Yeah, and I think another thing too is I'm kind of a little bit surprised by the amount of people that fit the criteria for that franchise. It's not a success, not a team that, or a franchise really, that has had a lot of success, but guys do hang around, and they also have been around a long ass time too, which helps accumulate those numbers. But still, I was kind of surprised that 12 people hit that. So. Yeah,
and the only thing is that I would initially agree with you, but then if you look at the 8 original franchises, it's significantly less than any of the rest of them. Like the Knicks had 16, the Hawks had 17, all the other teams were above 18. So, it's significantly less than all the other franchises that have been around, basically during that time. The Spurs at 10. The biggest surprise is kind of Mike Mitchell was 10th, but not really. Again, not really a huge surprise. The Raptors at 5. The Jazz had 13, which for a team that has not been around as long as some of these other ones, at kind of a high number. The biggest surprise to me was Thurl Bailey, who had over 20,000 and was 5th in franchise history. Not a guy that I always he's kind of like a random name from like the 80s and early 90s Jazz, but not somebody who I kind of think of in necessarily the same way as some of the other names.
Yeah, for him being as high as he was, 5th, I think is probably surprising. But the Jazz having 13 guys that meet this criteria, not because it feels like those guys that stay in Utah stay there for a very, very, very long time. So yeah, again, not a huge surprise. So
yeah, exactly. And the last bit of trivia that we'll close out with, we're running a little bit long here, but there are players who had more than 35,000 career minutes but did not get 15,000 with a single team. There are 5 players who meet that criteria. Andre Miller, who had his most with the Nuggets, almost 14,000 minutes. Jamal Crawford, who had most with the Knicks with 11,000 and the Clippers with over 10,000. Presumably will add to his career total with the Nets in the 2020 bubble season. He's been signed, so Jamal is back, baby. That's the best thing about the bubble season if it happens.
Yeah, I don't know about his minutes load in the bubble, but I'm hoping. Yeah. Fingers crossed. We'll see how it goes with the Nets.
That's all we need. Yeah,
15,000 minutes with the Nets to do it, but I'm confident.
I'm a little sad that he won't close his career with a 50-point game, but hey, he might be able to do it. You never know. I mean, he might be able to get 15.
Yeah, you don't know that. Hold on a minute.
Yeah.
Don't assume.
Yeah, I won't. Walt Bellamy, who had a significant career totals with the now Wizards franchise and the Hawks. Dikembe Mutombo, who almost got there with the Nuggets, was less than 600 minutes away from that with the Nuggets, and about 12,000 with the Hawks. And then Caldwell Jones, who had almost 14,000 with the Sixers, played for a lot of franchises in his career. So there you go.
So fun little topic here. I enjoyed this. Nice exploration into to some players. I love this idea of kind of talking about guys and where they fit in like the franchise legacy and the franchise history or whatever. So that's a really cool aspect of doing this research here. But yeah, fun names and a fun topic. So.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Rich. Hopefully everyone else enjoyed it. And if you do, you can let us know on social media. We are on Facebook and Twitter at Over and Back NBA. And if you like what we're doing, feel free to subscribe to the podcast. You can find us on pretty much all of the podcast services by searching for Over and Back. If we're not on your favorite one, let us know, and we'll try to get on there. As Rich talked about at the top of the show, we're trying to get all of our episodes back up on the archive, so you should be seeing some of those drop periodically here soon. So hopefully you'll enjoy those if you haven't listened to them, or if you haven't listened to them in a long time. But anyway, you check them out, and we're back again soon.